Hi guys, this is Ava Berkowitz.
And this is Relly Robinson, and let's meet our guests for today.
I'm Eva Royberg. I don't have much Jewish experience or Jewish background. Yeah.
I'm Kate Orlansky. I'm from LA and I've gone to private Jewish school my whole life. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for being with us here today on our unnamed podcast. If you're watching this, please hit us up with name ideas.
Email us.
Yeah.
We'll leave the email down below. You can email rellyandava@gmail.com or
Or
at bronfman.org for all your centrist questions. Okay, so let's do our daily thank you to the Bronfman Fellowship for introducing us to each other. And now our question of the day. It's a long one, so prepare yourselves.
From Hillel Schwab.
Shalom, pluralist kings and queens. I hope everyone is doing well. Something that's been on my mind recently are the differences between restrictions on Yom Tov and Shabbat. And in areas such as cooking, carrying, and transferring flames, Yom Tov is more lenient than Shabbat. But interestingly, according to the Shulchan Aruch, there are areas where actually Yom Tov is more strict than Shabbat. An example of that is muktzah machmat mius, something that would normally be forbidden because it's muktzah, but it smells disgusting and would really disturb, your positive experience of Shabbat. For example, the garbage, your garbage bag, with garbage in it. Normally on Shabbat, it would be okay to take the garbage out because it can be, disturbing to a Shabbat experience. But on Yom Tov, according to the Mechaber, no, because there's not the same idea of oneg Shabbat, of enjoyment of Shabbat on Yom Tov. Thank God the Ramah comes along and for Ashkenazim and is like, no, it's okay. You can do these things. Another thing that's been on my mind is a few weeks ago, we read Parshat Naso, which contains the ordeal of the Isha Sotah, the woman suspected of adultery. It's a very, very interesting passage and raises a lot of questions. And I was wondering, what your thoughts are on the Isha Sotah.
Thanks, Hillel. What a great question.
Actually, a really poignant, interesting question, Hillel. Thank you for asking that. And for those viewing this who understood like half of what he said, me too. It's okay. So
also, if you're ever wondering why Hillel hasn't been a guest yet, it's because his mind just works too fast for us. It works too fast for Zoom. Zoom can't handle Hillel yet.
We can't keep up.
Yeah.
Oh my God, do you hear that? What could that mean, Relly?
It's the Sam whistle. It's time for our ice melter question.
Whoa! Okay, so for today's ice melter question, we have a very specific to Bronfman question because the fellows have been receiving packages. And we would like to know which item in the package that we received you identify most with. I'll start us off so you guys can have a little time to think. I actually have two. It's this fidget and this fidget. They're both yellow. They sent me yellow ones, and I love yellow, as you can see by my yellow phone case. This one, the wiggleness, the uncertainty, those are just kind of the vibes right now. And this one, I feel like there's some symbolism in moving back and forth as a marble within a plastic cage, but I don't really identify with that right now. I just kind of like how it moves. So these are the ones I identify with. Eva, would you like to go next?
I think, well, now that you stole, I was going to do the wiggle one, but now they stole it. I think mine would be is the enormous mass of the random blue confetti, and just because of how too much there was not necessary. You took out all the other items, and then there's just this bed, at least 2 inches of blue confetti. So it's ridiculous. So that's why it's me.
Yeah, I agree. I would also say the blue confetti, but just because it was just very overwhelming and there's just a lot. And then also the Ice Age creatures. So I got, it's 3 little figurines. So I got a seal. I think I got 2 seals, and then one of them I thought was a woolly mammoth, but some people, and by some people I mean Ava, think it's an elephant, but I'm just gonna call them my Ice Age creatures.
Wait, were those little like figurines?
Yeah, the little animals. Yeah.
I got like a dinosaur. Was that an Ice Age?
It is Ice Age.
I really do wonder if we're like reenacting Noah's Ark, like if that's what it's for.
Ooh, that's smart. That's
We also
good.
got a Bronfman Fellowship water bottle, which I always love.
Oh yeah.
Branded
Also,
swag.
a bandana that I've been trying to style and have been failing miserably at.
I haven't received the package yet.
No,
It's hard for me to answer this question. So maybe I can get back to you on that.
What about your plant?
My plant? Like, do I identify with the plant?
Like, how's the plant's vibe? How's it going?
It really, like, it was like sitting next to like a live plant of mine, and the live plant died and the fake plant didn't die. And it really like showed the contrast between like the finite and the infinite, the mortal and the immortal, the absolute and the temporary, you know?
Wow.
Very profound.
That was so Bronfman of you. Wow.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna get started with a very tangentially related, and by tangentially related, I mean kind of not related at all, Vine, to start us off, kind of get us in the mood. So I will share my screen.
Yeah, and if you guys want to play a game in the comment section, tell us why the Vine is related to our topic today.
Yeah, tell us.
We can still pretend we're in Jewish summer camp.
Perfect. Tell me if this is working, I guess. Is that good? Can you see me?
Like, okay,
I see you.
It works.
Alrighty.
I brought you frankincense. Thank you. And I brought you myrrh. Thank you. Murder. Judas. No.
And that was the Vine to start us off.
Is it like related because wait, am I allowed to
Don't
guess?
spoil it. Don't spoil
Oh,
it.
I'm so sorry.
We'll find out.
Ellie and I were like cracking up. Like we didn't laugh just then, but when I saw that Vine for the first time, I was like peeling over laughing.
But I don't. It's not that funny, but it is funny.
It's so funny. My stomach almost exploded at how funny. Whoa, and on that note, let's get into it. So today we're talking about Isha Sotah, which is kind of this very weird story in the Torah about how, I guess, alleged adulteresses are treated. We'll kind of go through the text, but basically an overview, they have the opportunity to drink this special potion, water drink thing. And if they did cheat on their husbands, then they explode. And if they didn't, they're fine.
Just for some background knowledge, is an interesting fact to remember is that in Judaism, in the olden days, men were allowed to have as many wives as they wanted, so there was no concept of adultery for men, but women were not allowed to have like more than one husband or to cheat on their husband. So that's just an interesting piece of background knowledge and fuel for our feminist argument that will come later on. Okay.
So I'm kind of new to this text, just some background. I heard about it for the first time when Kate brought it up in the group chat, and I was like, whoa, exploding women, that sounds fun. I know Relly and Kate have some more background with this text, so they can kind of guide us more in terms of how it's perceived mostly in Jewish communities, and Eva and I are more newcomers to the text. So yeah, should we start reading?
Yeah.
Relly, you want to start us off?
Yeah. Also just background. I've never actually learned it inside. I just learned the concept before. I was supposed to learn it this year, but coronavirus ruined our material plans, so I didn't learn it yet. But I know the concept of it, so we can start. Also, Ava just decided that we should put all of the text, so we're gonna have to decide what we're actually gonna read. But I think the beginning is very noteworthy. Okay, so I'll read the beginning. So, in that a man has had carnal relations with her unbeknownst to her husband, and she keeps secret the fact that she has defiled herself without being forced, and there is no witnesses against her, but a fit of jealousy comes over him, and he is wrought up about the wife who has defiled herself, or a fit of jealousy comes over one, and he is wrought up about his wife, although she has not defiled herself. So already there's an interesting factor where there is that there are no witnesses, but the husband just feels a fit of jealousy come over him. So he's just suspecting. Like, there is no proof. That's what it says here. There is no witness, but he has this fit of jealousy that comes over him. And so
also, just to note, I kind of really hate the phrase that she has defiled herself.
I know. He has come disgraced.
Yeah, it's defilement.
Yeah. And then, okay, we'll do one more. Then the man shall bring his wife to the Kohen. The Kohen is like the priest. And 1/10 of an ephah of barley, that's just like a form of measurement, and he shall put, I can't see the full thing.
He shall neither pour oil over it nor put frankincense on it, for it is a meal offering of jealousies, a meal offering of remembrance, recalling iniquity. So basically, he's bringing the priest like an offering on behalf of this woman who has defiled herself.
But it's not like a good offering. It's like an upsetting offering, you know? It's like he's not pouring oil over it or frankincense. Just like, it's not a good meal, you know? It's a sad one.
You don't want to be eating that.
No. Okay. Okay, should we keep reading?
Yeah, let's keep reading a little.
Wait, I have a quick question. Do you guys know what frankincense means? Or like what it is?
It's like it's a spice or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Kohen shall bring her forth and present her before the Lord. The priest shall take, interesting that it goes from Kohen to priest. Okay, interesting. The priest shall take sacred water in an earthen vessel, and taking some of the earth that is on the floor of the tabernacle, the priest shall put it onto the water. After he has made the woman stand before the Lord, the priest shall bear the woman's head and place upon her hands the meal offering of remembrance.
So that's important to note, is Relly told me last night, that's where the kind of tradition of women covering their heads when they get married comes from.
Yeah.
When he's defiled, the covering comes off.
Yeah, because it's interesting also because he's embarrassing her, like just based on like an accusation. It's supposed to be an embarrassing ordeal. He's uncovering her hair, which again is like this idea of like taking away your modesty and like exposing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, so the only like purpose of the head covering is that like the man would take it off of her in this like particular event?
This is where the source of it comes from. There is like a meaning behind it, but this is where the source that we
Got
But that's, I mean, in traditional Judaism, it's not like, oh, you have to wear a head covering so I can take it off when you choose.
Yeah, I know.
Right,
this is where we hear about it, I think, for the first time.
Gotcha.
And in the priest's hand shall be the water of bitterness that induces the spell. Okay. So, okay, interesting. Should I keep reading? Should we keep going?
Yeah, so this is kind of a lot, but basically it's describing the process of what happens when the woman is taken to the priest. Something I think is interesting to know, and Kate, I'm wondering if you have any like different views on this, but I see this a lot as like the woman is kind of being handled by the men around her, like she's defiled by a man, and then her husband, a man, takes her to the Kohen, who is also a man, and then God, who's described as a man, like judges her. I don't know. I think that's an interesting part to note.
Yeah, I think the question is like, what do you think are the implications of that? Like, yeah, this happened like in the Torah, so like what does that mean? Like, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's also, I'm not sure if this is true, so don't like quote me on this, but I think I've learned that like the Isha Sotah thing like hasn't happened that often, or like maybe it's never happened before or something. Like this is just like one of those things that they put in there, but it's never happened. Like I might be wrong. I just think I've heard that before, like on an offhand comment at school.
Oops, it seems like we lost Eva.
Oh no.
But she'll be back.
People?
Sorry, my dog was barking.
I couldn't figure out whose dog it was.
Okay. Once Eva comes back, we'll keep going.
Did I text her?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a message to our viewers. We can do a little sponsorship here. One of our sponsors, Mr. Rick's Bottled Vibes. It's one of the entrepreneurs of our cohort created this bottled vibe venture. Really, if you're in your bag, if you're feeling bad, you should really try and get these bottled vibes. Sometimes they're mediocre, sometimes they're fantastic. Oh, she's here. But you should definitely check them out. We'll link it down below.
For all inquiries, contact Mies, if you know who that is.
Sorry guys, the computer died.
Hi, Eva.
fine. Happened to me last time.
I think that was the patriarchy.
Oh yeah, the patriarchy
was.
is showing again.
She's trying to shut me down automatically.
Okay, let's keep reading a bit and then we'll talk about it as a whole.
Okay.
Where did you leave? Oh, this bill. Okay. The priest shall adjure the woman, saying to her, if no man has lain with you, if you have not gone astray in defilement while married to your husband, be immune to harm from this water of bitterness that induces the spell. So if you haven't actually cheated, this will have no effect on you. But if you have gone astray while married to your husband and have defiled yourself, if a man other than your husband has had carnal relations with you, here the priest shall administer the curse of adjuration to the woman. As the priest goes on to say to the woman, may the Lord make you a curse and an imprecation among your people, as the Lord causes your thigh to sag and your belly to distend.
It doesn't sound like exploding. That sounds like pregnancy.
It doesn't sound like exploding.
Yeah. So actually, Eva, funny you mentioned that. I just found an article last night that this is actually about pregnancy rather than exploding. Most of the other interpretations are about exploding, but this one source from the Jewish Theological Seminary said that actually this is a help to the woman because if she's proven pure, then she's not pregnant, right? Obviously, she wouldn't be if she didn't have sex with another man, right? But if it's proven, wait, I think I messed up.
I think it was also saying that, like, if, like, a woman, like, again, this is what we talked about last time, like, the common theme of, like, biblical women not, like, being barren, like, not being able to have children.
Right.
I read in the article that it said that, like, this can be a way for women to stop being barren by proving herself pure, which doesn't seem, like, necessary to prove your, you know, like, to have children to, like, have to, like, defile your, like, embarrass yourself. I don't know how. I've never heard the interpretation before. I think it's a very interesting one, but I've always learned the exploding women thing, so I'm not sure.
Also, I feel like, I don't know, this is like crazy, but I feel like it could be, like, what if she was pregnant because she, like, had, you know, carnal relations with the other man, and then the juice were, like, a process of, like, killing the baby? Like, that sounds crazy, but, like...
Abortion?
Yeah, well, I guess, but, like it's punishment?
Huh, interesting.
I don't know.
Yeah, did it say in the article? Did it say that the woman dies, or just say it says that, like, it proves that she's pregnant and then she's just embarrassed and, like, shamed?
Okay, this is what it says. While it is certainly distressing to imagine biblical women inflicted by this humiliation and physical threat, I like to imagine this ordeal as one of the examples of biblical ingenuity. Let us note that the effects of the bitter waters are somewhat paradoxical. If the woman is guilty of adultery, she will become barren. If she is innocent, she will be fertile. Interesting. Okay. Some interpret this verse to mean that she will get pregnant. In other words, the Sotah trial will enable a jealous, suspicious husband to be assured that his wife's pregnancy is a sign of her faithfulness to him. Surely this bit of biblical magic was a way of maintaining shalom bayit, which is a peaceful home, and a means for ascertaining clear lineage. The woman's pregnancy would be attributed solely to her husband. So this is saying that actually the explosion part is not her getting pregnant, it's her becoming barren?
I guess.
So abortion.
Either way, I think it's like a punishment. And I just read here that, like, if she's innocent, then you get, like, a reward. So, like,
yeah, it says here at the end, just to, like, skip, because basically all that happens at the next thing is that it says that, like, this is where we got the cultish vibes, is that when she drinks the water, she says, like, amen, which is, like, very strange because, like, she's in this process of shaming herself and she's saying that. But then it just says, like, if she's guilty, her stomach will sag and her thigh, whatever, like, that whole thing. And then at the end it says, like, and the woman shall become a curse among her people if she's guilty. But if she's innocent and pure, she shall be unharmed and be able to retain seed. So that means she can be pregnant. So that is interesting because I always learned the explosion.
Wait, so she would be able to retain the seed, so, like, retain the pregnancy. I feel like it's abortion. It sounds like abortion to me.
No, but I think the theory is that, yeah, I don't think it's abortion, because if she's sinful and she's pregnant, then she's barren. So I guess it would be abortion, but it would also be that she can never have children again. Here it's saying that if she is pure, she will be able to get pregnant.
Abortion plus, basically.
Abortion. Just going back really quickly, I think that amen part is really important, because it can be interpreted as like that's her autonomy, like that's her consenting to this whole process. Whereas before I kind of saw it as the men moving her around, bringing her to this person for the sake of men's jealousy. Like there's even an exclamation point in this text. Like she's saying like, Amen, Amen, I consent to this.
But I don't think it's like real consent. It's like, just say yeah, and then she's like, okay, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
no, like you're already, like, you're about to drink the potion. Like, it's not really a matter of consent. That's like the whole issue is that your husband has no proof but is suspecting that he's cheating on you. Like, it's already a whole very embarrassing, shameful ordeal.
Uh-huh.
And they're like, okay, say yeah, say you're into this.
And there's consistently language like once he has made her drink the water and like stuff like that, rather than, well, I don't know how common it is that it will be like the woman will do an action in like the Bible or Torah or whatever, but it's like consistently it's like the priest will make her do this, like this will happen upon her.
Yeah, so that is noteworthy, but in general, like the biblical language is very strange like that. Like it's always like it's not like language that we're used to. It's not like she just drinks it. It's like, and this caused her to do that. But it is noteworthy that it's saying like the men like will possess and like make her do this stuff. But like maybe I'm wrong, but I think the biblical language is usually like strange like that.
Kate, do you have any ideas on that?
Well, I mean, like, I'm just wondering, like, what you guys, like, think of this. Like, yeah, like, this story happened, so it's, like, what does that mean? Like, what does that imply, I guess? Like, that's what I'm wondering. Like, we know that this is here. Like, we know that this, like, is, like, a weird thing that happened, so it's just, like, what do we think that means? I'm curious what you guys think.
It's also, like, what happens to the man who committed adultery with her? Because I've learned before that she explodes, and at the same time he explodes wherever he is. But I don't see any proof of that in the text.
But what if her belly's just like distending or distending? Like, does his belly then distend? Because I don't see no explosions happening.
I don't think, because I think the belly is it's the belly because the womb is like near there, right?
I mean, I think so.
So if you would have no womb.
Yeah, but I think what I learned in middle school, so like remember it was middle school, is that she drinks, again, this was not text-based. This was like, I don't know why we brought it up. We brought it up and it was like, she explodes. And I was like, my 7th grade feminist self was like, okay, so what happens to him? And like, well, he gets punishment too. Like, I think he dies on the spot, or I think he explodes also. But it's not the same level of shame because men are allowed to be unfaithful.
So, Kate, kind of going back to your question, right, so this is here. We have some issues with it, but it is part of, like, Judaism. So how do we move forward in modern day, in our modern day Jewish practice with the knowledge that this passage exists? Like, what do we do with it? So for me, I don't feel so bound to halakha. That's kind of, to Jewish law, that's kind of just how I practice Judaism. And I also find meaning in looking at the Torah and other Jewish texts under a very critical eye. I don't think it has to be right all the time. So I kind of see this passage as very much a product of its time. Like the woman being held accountable for something that men got away with every single day kind of has some parallels to today. So I guess we can find meaning from that. And I think this is a good passage to look at under a very critical feminist lens. That's how I interpret it.
Yeah. I mean, I see, like, to me, it just shows that there's not a lot of value placed on, like, a woman's right to, like, this is a new kind of idea, but like due process and just the ability to defend herself. And it's like really like man's word versus woman's word, like there's, I guess this is like a way to test who's right, but still the man is prioritized, the man's word at least is prioritized, because the woman would have to undergo this like whole process, and would be able to just be like, oh, I didn't do it, and then so.
Yeah, so I think, okay, so I feel like there's a lot of it's just a very weird passage. Like, it seems very cult-like, and it doesn't seem very Jewish, and it just kind of seems like very, like, just kind of like strange. And I think it's something noteworthy to think that, like, I don't think adultery is like as big of a problem now as it was then, because I think nowadays we don't get married as young, and there's less of like, it's not really like arranged marriage, and it's not getting married, like, I think it's very different expectations of marriage. I don't think there's as much adultery going on anymore. And now we have Jewish law that men can't cheat on their wives either. So it's also an interesting thing, is that you can't really put in the Isha Sotah concept anymore, because without doing it also to the man, because we have like new rabbinical laws that you can't, like, there's polygamy is not a thing anymore. You can't do that. So again, there's the question of like, assuming that one day the Messiah comes and we have the temple again, and we're living in this time when we follow all the laws of the Torah again, like, is the Isha Sotah going to come back? Is that going to be a thing again? Because I think with a modern lens, I don't think most people are going to be like down with like adultery from either gender or like from either perspective of the marriage. Like, I don't think that's going to be a thing that people will feel comfortable with anymore. And also, what I always learned whenever I complained about why can men have many wives and women can't have many husbands, was that because they wouldn't know who the father of the child is. And nowadays it's not a problem. You could do a paternity test. So I'm wondering if when this time comes again, will we all just be allowed to have polygamous relationships and be as married to many people as we want? So I think it's an interesting thing to think about. We don't know the answer to it, but this whole process seems very strange and out of place. And like, I think if you have a husband who is so jealous and he doesn't have any proof, that's already a marriage that's doomed. So that's another thing. So I think that's also like, if the woman survives this and her stomach doesn't explode and she becomes pure, like, how would you still want to be married to someone who's so suspicious of you and has no proof, but is still willing to like put you through this whole shameful process? Like, it's supposed to be shameful. She has to go there in public and uncover her hair, which we assume that's like a level of modesty. She gets empowerment from covering her hair. She's forced to do that, and she's forced to drink some weird potion and like just be like, yeah, God, take me, whatever. My husband thinks I'm defiling myself. So I think it's a very interesting idea of like, would you want to stay married to someone who does that? So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think it's definitely very important that like this was like something that happened in the biblical era and like not at all after. And even if it happened in the biblical era, like you said earlier, like this might have been a practice that was just like theoretical but never actually happened. And like, I'm pretty sure I read that during the Talmudic era, like the rabbis said like this practice doesn't make sense because like it's not fair because it only punishes women and it doesn't punish like male adulterers. So like obviously like this is a practice that is like extremely ancient and like isn't really an issue at all now, because like we don't do this and we haven't done this for years, if ever. So like that's why like I don't really think it's like such a big deal. I mean, like it's obviously like it's certainly like very strange and like cruel that it happened in like the Torah, but I think there is something to be said that like this was a punishment before God. Like it was like you drink this, like I've read that like they put like God's name in like the water, and like you would drink the water, and like if you committed adultery like you would die or whatever. But like it's not like society is killing the woman, it's God. So it's like if God decided that the woman should die, then like that's God's decision. It's not like all the men in the town are like gonna like stone her. It was a punishment before the Lord. It wasn't like society, I guess. So I think that's like really important detail.
It's kind of interesting because when you think about it like now in modern day context, and when you think of like cheating scandals and how that plays out in sort of like the modern sphere, and it's kind of almost like the court of public opinion has to sort of like weigh in. And so it's like if I like this made me think of like just now made me think of like Monica Lewinsky, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and it was like I think it literally played out in court because of the impeachment, but when everyone it became clear that Bill had like cheated on her and that was over, everyone kind of went on their day, and like Bill Clinton wasn't impeached. It was considered this kind of like ridiculous, investment in order to like do these impeachment trials. Like this is like a private thing that like they should handle, and like we should play no part in it. And there was virtually no effect really to his reputation or to his ability to govern. But it did sort of like follow Hillary a little bit if you saw it later on in the 2016 election when, Trump or other people would kind of like bring it up in like sly ways and, use it to make fun of her appearance or use it to sort of make fun of her husband. And I don't know.
Right. I mean, so like Clinton was impeached, but he wasn't
He was like,
from office. And he just kind of went along with his career. But Monica Lewinsky, like, she's branded with that ordeal now. Like,
right.
When you hear her name, that's what you think of. Whereas when you hear Clinton, you think of his whole career. But I think that also plays into what Kate was saying, right? That Isha Sotah, at least in this rendition, in this, I guess, passage, it wasn't like the public making the judgment, it was God. Although when I kind of read the Torah, I do think of God's will and kind of like society's will as very interconnected, because I do think when the Torah was written, like that's what was coming into play. That's what people were.
Yeah, there's also a distinction. Back to my favorite text, Eov, and Kate knows that also. My favorite thing, Eov, is that you're not supposed to, even though this is what people do, and like I didn't even realize that we're not supposed to do this until this year, and I've grown up in the Jewish community my whole life, is that it's not our place to pass judgment. And people try and do that all the time. People try and excuse like things like this all the time because it's God's will. And that I always think like that's a very like Christian or like Catholic idea, like it's God's will. This is happening because it's God's will. But like Jewish people say that all the time. And I think it's very important to know that we don't know God's will. Like you can pretend you do, but you don't. You don't know why anything is happening. You can't justify anything. So I think even in this sense, this is a very shameful experience. The only person who has like a right to actually like have any judgment, I guess, is the priest, because he's really carrying out God's will. But like you can't, there's no right of the people to be like, oh, but this is happening because God's will. Like people cannot put in their own input because only God can make the decision. Like, like I don't think people try and say like they can try and shame the woman for like whatever, but like it's not the people's right. It's God's will. So it's not your responsibility. And whatever happens, like it's fine. God will do it. If God's going to do it, God's going to do it. You don't have to do anything,
Right, but isn't the whole idea of the punishment like that she's embarrassed? Because I think it could be true that it's, God's, like God wanted her to be punished, but then you have to consider like the means of the punishment was making her embarrassed. And so then God would want her to be judged by those around her as like a punishment, as a deterrent for other women to be like, oh, that was so embarrassing for her, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's where like I kind of get like the Scarlet Letter idea from. Like it just seems they seem very connected, this whole idea of like the woman, because the woman, even there's no mention of like society around her, but I'm assuming there's a crowd there, because if it's going to be embarrassing, you want people to see it and you want people to be like, oh, I don't want to be like that. So that's an also interesting thing to think about, that the whole society's there to shame her, because we don't like to think of Jews as like enjoying punishment or enjoying seeing terrible things, like I don't like to think of us as like medieval people going to like watch like a punishment, like a beheading. Like I don't like to think of Jews like that, but like it's hard to think that like there's no way this is happening in private. It wouldn't be embarrassing to have your hair uncovered in front of your husband and the priest. Like it's embarrassing.
God was kind of like using, I guess, the people around her as a tool for the embarrassment. Like,
mm-hmm.
Yeah, but like imagine what happens if she's innocent. Like,
yeah,
interesting. Like it's just an interesting thing to think about. Like she gets all this. Will the husband get the shame then after that happens for like assuming, or is it just going to be forgotten? Like I'd like it to be forgotten, but also you don't want to forget that like someone just falsely accused her, and then she had to go through this whole embarrassing ordeal based on a whim or based on a fit of jealousy. So it's an interesting thought. And like, again, back to what you were saying about like Monica Lewinsky, is that like when you think of Bill Clinton, the first thing I think about isn't cheating. The first thing I think about when I hear her name is the cheating scandal, which is very unfortunate. And also like I watched an interview with her, I think with John Oliver, about how like she can't, like her lifestyle is like so messed up, and like how like all the time you hear her name, it's the first thing you think about. But like Bill Clinton, there's other things I think about that are negative. That's not the first thing I think about is the cheating scandal. So I think it's like you'd like to think that in modern day, in a secular world, like we wouldn't shame women for this, but like people still do. Or like focusing on just women. I think adultery is a problem, but like focusing on only one person in this aspect is like problematic.
Mm-hmm. To be fair, there's already like Bill Clinton was, a president, and then like Monica Lewinsky, I think I'm not 100% sure what she does now, which probably proves your point. I think she does something for like sex trafficking, but there is like already that sort of like unequal power balance.
Yeah.
But it's still true that what's interesting was that the impeachment proceedings, it wasn't this is God who's enacting the justice. And there it was sort of the prosecutors and like the court who was enacting the justice. And then everyone else, the public, was like left to decide, what they thought of it. And I think it's very similar to how this would play out because, maybe even if like she was, acquitted, there would be gossip around it or.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's such a good parallel that you brought up because it's like, again, like a public proceeding of adultery. And like, I don't think that happens, like even when it happens to celebrities, there's no trial, it's not the same thing, but like here there's a trial. Like I never thought about that. It's such an interesting parallel.
Mm-hmm. And like it's interesting because it's like a way of taking a private sort of like a domestic, like British people call like fights domestics, into the court of law, or into, in front of God, in front of sort of like a religious kind of ritual ceremony.
Yeah.
Right. I just want to give a little plug. So Alicia Jo Ravens, who's a musician who's actually coming to teach us on Bronfman, which is so exciting. She has a song called Secrets / You're Always Watching. You guys should look it up after. It's about Isha Sotah, and kind of the distrust that blooms in like a relationship when something like this happens, and the distrust between like the husband and wife, whether or not she's guilty of it. So I'd highly recommend looking that up. It's part of the Girls in Trouble series.
Yeah, but I think again, like what Kate was saying, is that it's so interesting because it's supposed to be just God judging you. That's the idea of it. It's not supposed to be people, but like, how could it not be people? It's such a public. It should be just God. But I think that's another like thing of like weakness within like depravity of human beings. Like with God, it's supposed to be like it's not supposed to be your judgment. Like let God give the judgment, but instead people are gonna give their own opinion. Maybe that's just my modern idea of like constant gossip and whatever. But like I think it's so interesting to think about like it should be God. You're right. Like that's the idea of it, but it's not in theory. Like I can't imagine it would be.
Right. But it's also interesting, right? Because like, I don't know, again, thinking about the time, like these communities, like, I don't know, this was seen, I read an article on like Isha Sotah, like the adultery was seen as kind of like an affront to God more than an affront to the husband, right? Because adultery is forbidden by God rather than the husband. So basically it was also like a community, like upholding the standards of the community type thing. I'm not saying that's right. I just think it's very interesting because they were doing it like as an affront to God.
It also, like, I'm sure it probably remedied a lot of marriages. Like, it was also, like, I read, like, an article about how this was, like, actually, like, a step towards peace in the community because, like, it would resolve conflict. I mean, obviously, like, people might die and, like, it was, like, a bit of, like, an extreme, like, remedy to a conflict. But, like, I'm sure, like, there were women who were innocent and, yes, they were shamed. But in the end, they did prove their innocence and it like resolved the conflict. Like when there was a distrust, like that distrust came to a conclusion because they knew what happened. So I mean, it wasn't like completely like nonsensical. Like there was a purpose to this obscure practice. So I don't know.
Yeah, in the article that I was reading before from the Jewish Theological Seminaries, that they said that there's this character in Tanakh. I don't want to go on a tangent, but it's relevant that there's this character Hannah, and she's like one of like the iconic women who was barren, and then she like prayed, and then she was able to have a child, and she ended up giving up her child as like a nazir, like a servant to God. Like that was her promise. She was, if I get a child, I'll give him to God, and he's one of like the greatest Nevi'im. So it's interesting to think that and so in this article it was saying that Hannah was like actually like a very like sarcastic, interesting, like force of nature character, and her husband was married to another woman. He had 2 wives, and this other woman had like a ton of children. And there's a lot of interesting like feminist theory in this story, and that other woman would taunt Hannah, be like, you can't have children. But what I learned is that she was taunting in order to get Hannah to pray so she would be able to get pregnant. It was the idea that like she's helping her reach what she wants. And then in this text, it was saying that she said that she would try and pretend she was cheating on her husband so that her husband would find her and make her drink the Sotah water, and then she'd be able to have a child. So she was willing to do anything to get what she wanted. And it's such an interesting thought. Like, she's like, this is what I want. This is what I know I want. I'm gonna do anything I can. Like, I'll embarrass myself. I don't care. I want a child. And then she even gave up her child to God. She just wanted a child. Like, so it's an interesting thought. Like, why did she want a child so badly? Was it just to prove something? Was it just to prove she was a woman, or is it because she really wanted it? And I think it's clear she really wants it because she's willing to go to so many extremes.
But also, like, this, like, that shows that this is a system, like, this tradition is a system that, like, theoretically women might be able to manipulate to actually give them more say and more power.
Yeah, so it's such an interesting way, like, someone using it as a form of empowerment and as a form for their own gain. I think that's very.
She didn't end up doing that, just for the record.
No, she just prayed.
So are we saying this because we think that the process helped her like get another child?
Like, it could have, if she was innocent, which she wasn't actually going to cheat on her husband, it says that she can, like, the woman can, like, take in seed or whatever, she can withhold it, so meaning she can get pregnant. So I guess it was saying, like, if she does this, it'll make her not barren anymore. So it's very interesting. She didn't do it, but I think it's a very interesting way of interpreting the situation and using it to your own gain and, like, turning it around to make it work for you.
Also, what does it mean, like, literally to give a child to God? Maybe I'm thinking, like, too literally.
So she made him, like there's this, like, it's called a Nazir. It's like being a servant to God, like devoting your life to God. So, like, you live in the temple and you never cut your hair, you never drink wine. I don't think you ever get married. It's kind of like, it like kind of reminds me of, like, being a monk.
Yeah.
It's an interesting thing, but it's, like, kind of like,
Yeah, like a nun, but male and Jewish.
yeah, so it's like devoting your life to God. So, like, when he was 3, which is like when she stopped nursing him, she brought him to, like, the temple, and, like, he lived there forever. Like, she went to visit him, but, like, still so interesting that she worked so hard. She wanted it so bad to have a child, and she was like, I'm willing to give it up to God. Like, God will give me a child, I'll give my child back to God.
Does this still happen today or no?
Oh, no.
I think you could theoretically do it, but
yeah,
I don't.
some people have done it, but, like, it's not common practice anymore because there is no temple, so it's much harder. Like, I mean, you could, but wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting that there's, like, this concept of, like, you could, like, get a reward out of it. Like, I'm reading, I just, like, have an entire Tanakh right here, and I'm, like, reading the text, and there's, like, a commentary on, like, the part that says, like, if the woman has not become defiled and she is pure, then she shall be proven innocent and she shall bear seed. And there's a commentary on she shall bear seed, and it said, she will bear children more successfully. She had suffered difficult labor. She will give birth more easily. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, like, it's totally possible that, like, this could have been a good thing for the woman. Or, I mean, there's public humiliation, but you do get, like, a potential reward out of it if that's what you wanted.
If you're like in this case, like, it seems like you can be working with your husband. You're like, hey, like, just, like, give me a false accusation. Like, we'll go through it. Like, whatever, it'll be fine. Then, like, I'll have an easy birth. Like, it's such an interesting your like benefit. I don't know. It's so interesting.
But would God be able to know that?
Exactly. So I don't know. Like, would God still make you pure? Hannah thinks so. But
Oh, I see more commentary that says, or God will give her a child to compensate for the ordeal. So it's like, sorry you had to go through this. That's what even Ezra says, and Rashbam. It's like, sorry you had to go through this. Here's a child. That was bad.
So I guess that's why Hannah was saying that she wouldn't tell her husband, so that it actually would be, like, shameful and God would see it. So, like, it wouldn't be a trick. And then the compensation.
That's interesting, though, that, like this is a process by which you can have easier labor. Because if you go back to, like, why women have very hard labors, this is another tangent, but it's, like, the story of Adam and Eve when, like, because Eve was responsible for, like, introducing Adam to the fruit, the wicked fruit or whatever, and they ate it and things went downhill from there. And that's why women have, like, hard labors. But, like, they were a pair who had trust in each other. Like, that was their whole thing, that they kind of did the same thing. And from that trust, indirectly, their hard labor came from that, and very painful deliveries, and, like, thousands of years of pain for women. And then this is, like, a process of distrust that can lead to easing of that pain for a specific.
Yeah, and also the whole idea of like Adam and Eve is this idea of like lust and like being like apparently there's this my sister told me this in like senior year that like the snake seduced her, and like that was a part of like how she ate from the tree, which is like not a thing that you think about. It's like kind of sounds like Greek mythology, but like, apparently the snake seduced her, and like that's a whole, again, it feels into this whole idea of like lust and like carnal relations and like seductive behavior, like that like the woman gave pain for all the generations because of like seductive behavior, and then here it's freeing her for pain by resisting it, I guess.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like, giving a child would be, God's way of like sort of bringing back harmony to the family, which I guess is sort of like the whole goal of Sotah is to preserve like familial values, and it's kind of interesting because it's like if you make a mistake, you will be, found for it, and that will affect your relationship because like everybody will know and you'll be branded literally. And I think it's interesting how like deeply that's such a sin, but then if it's not true, it's like a real good harmony because you get a child too, and that's like a real bonding experience.
Right. So like the idea of this process is not only reactionary, but it's like preventative. Like it's so women don't cheat on their husbands to maintain harmony.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's like that statement itself is kind of like, but also, what was I gonna say? I don't remember.
All right, well, Relly, if it comes back to you, feel free to share it. But I think we're going to wrap up the conversation there.
Oh, wait, we have to, okay, how's the plant?
Not dead yet, but also not alive. Thank you guys so much. You guys were fantastic guests. None of us exploded today, which I feel
Yay!
like
That's the goal.
like a round of applause. Woo!
No explosions. Oh, thank you to our other sponsor, the Jewish ice cream truck that comes by my house every day with the Come and Make a Bracha theme song blasting. I salute you guys. Thank you.
The unsung heroes of this world. Tune in next week for the next episode of our unnamed podcast, and please think of names for us. We need them like very badly. Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.